I'm back with another video, and today we're building a product landing page with a checkout process, integrated payments, and the delivery of the digital product via email to the user. We'll learn concepts like building secure forms, creating and integrating serverless functions that also process payments, various database operations, and monitoring using webhooks, and finally scheduling using cron jobs. If you're looking to quickly set up a Fullstack app for your online store, this is the fastest and easiest way to do so. This video would also be helpful if you are preparing for an interview, as many of these concepts are commonly asked about. Practicing with tutorial will help you gain knowledge and better understanding of these concepts in just 2 hours. And before we begin coding, let's dive into architecture. So what do we have here? We have a client app and we have a backend of our application. So first starts off with user interacts with our client. They can see the product, they can decide to buy the product. And once they enter their information, click buy, we're sending a request to our backend. This request would be sent to a serverless function, and this will take care of interacting with the Stripe. Stripe is what we're using for the payments. There's a few more steps in between server and the Stripe, but we're going to go into details about this when we get to the integrating part. But in short, we send an information and a request for Stripe to process the payment. And then using a webhook, we are monitoring Stripe once it confirms the payment. And if the payment is confirmed, Stripe sends us an event. And based on this event, if it fails or succeeds, we save the payment like order number, user email, etc. in the database. And we also send an email to the user, and email contains their digital product. It could be a link, which I have in this example, but it could be also files and etc. And yep, that is the purchase process and the user flow. As I mentioned, for the backend, we are using AirCode. You can build and deploy your serverless functions or API directly in the browser with no extra configuration required or setting up of a server or a database, because it comes with MongoDB already integrated and other database features. We just need to write the logic in code, which I will also share in the GitHub repo. And for the front end, we have a React, and for styling, we are using Tailwind. Without further ado, let's get right into the project. Okay, we'll create the React project using Vite. Vite is basically like a package manager for React, and the command is npm create Vite at latest. And let's give name to the project. That would be digital product tutorial, and framework React. We will use TypeScript, so yes to that. And it already created, so let's cd into it. And one of the benefits of Vite is that it is faster to run server on it. Next command we have to do npm install, and once we install all the node modules, then we run the app using npm run dev. But before we run the app, let's also use Tailwind, which is what we're going to be using for styling. And Tailwind makes styles easier by having this utility classes that you can just use that comes with like applied styles as well, so you don't have to write CSS yourself. And so we already created the project, and we are gonna copy this Tailwind install command and paste it in the terminal. I have terminal open in VS Code, but you can just use also regular terminal works. And then we'll initiate Tailwind using this command here. I'm gonna make this bigger so you guys can see. Once it's initiated, it should create Tailwind config file as it says here. And let's open up the code in VS Code and examine it. It opens like new window every time, so I'm going to replace this. More steps before Tailwind is set up. First we go to Tailwind configs and we update the content of the content. Let's save this, and afterwards we have to copy this and paste it in index.css, which is going to be inside source folder. So let's go all the way at the top. And while we are at index.css file, let's add one more thing here, which should be div at root. So I want by default root to take full widths and heights of the screen. So I'm going to do that by display flex. Then flex direction, let's set it to column. And if we set flex grow to 1, it's going to take up the whole space. And this is also easier when running the app when we don't have all the components in the place yet, so for them to kind of take up the space and the height. Now let's run the app using npm run dev, and once it starts development server, it starts on this, like, it will show the URL here, which let's copy. So it's running, it's just a sample code, and let's test the Tailwind integration just to make sure that it's working. So that would be, I'm gonna close this out. Let's zoom on the code, and in app.tsx, I am going to remove all this extra code that we have, and let's just do this one. So it should have like an underline and font bold, and that's great. Okay, now let's start building out the header that would be placed at the top, and then we'll add the product information. So for the header and other components, we're going to create a new folder, name it components, and new file, header.tsx, since we're using TypeScript. And using extension here, I'm going to create sample TypeScript component. So we have import React at the top. We have types for the props. So it defines what kind of props is this component taking, then component declaration, and then return statement, a div with the name on it. And actually we're missing export default. Let's define props now. So for props, we just need to have like a title of the application. So let's do title string. And in here we can remove the header itself and access props.title, our variable. And we can also change this class name, add some padding, and border in the end. And we'll create another class name that's for container. So it automatically adjusts the width and the height. It would adjust the maximum width, and we can take a look at how it's done. And let's wrap this into a paragraph. Okay, let's save it and import header inside our app.tsx, and I'm gonna replace this with the header. And as for the title, let's do let's go to app.css and just remove this styling that was automatically generated when we created a new app. Inside index.css, the body has item center, so I'm going to remove that as well. And all right, so that's our header at the top. And let's take a look at the container class that I used inside the header to wrap our text around it. So on different breakpoints, it has a different max width, as you can see here. And by default, it's not centered. So every time we want to center it, we have to add this margin auto. But instead of this, if we want to have it centered by default, we can also modify its configuration inside Tailwind config. So that will save us time. It's also a better approach. And let's go to Tailwind config file, and inside theme we can add container, and we can do center true. So now I'm gonna have this open, and you can see before I save it that that is our container. And if I save it, it's gonna get centered. Add different paddings on different screen sizes. What I want to customize is the max width. I think they're too big. So what I'll do is define screens, and in here define the values. This piece is like totally optional, but I just think the sizes look better. Let's save this and go back to the header. Let's update, add the classes for this one. We'll make it text bigger, font also bold, and the color of the text would be black. And as you can see, we also have border bottom, which is by default of color gray, and we can update the color of it. For example, once we define the border, we can just pass hash in here, like a default value, but we're gonna use the same color of border for everywhere, so it would be better to also modify the configuration, and that would also go inside the theme. We define border color, theme, we pass in all the theme colors. So theme colors, and we don't need this primary, second, or danger. And then default theme, and then color, not 300, but let's do gray 900. Okay, nice. And let's remove, just have bottom in the border in the end. Okay, we're done with so far customizing anything Tailwind related, and we'll jump into building out the product component right now. And let's go to source, create a pages folder, because we're gonna have more pages besides the product, so it would be easier to structure them this way. And inside pages, new file product.tsx. And until we're defining logic and nothing UI related, I'm gonna expand this fully, and let's define first props, what kind of props we're using for the product. So we're gonna definitely need a title, then we'll have a description of the product. The type of title and description would be both string. Then let's have some images. This would be an array, so for that we can create a new type for image. That equals to, it has two elements. First we have a source of the image, that's string, and also alt text, so a way of describing the image. And then we'll take this type and say images is of type image and array of the image. And price, let's do number. And for question mark means optional, so let's say if there's no price, we can make it like free or something. If there's, I think that's it for now. And moving on to the product itself. Here we can have a separate div that has like a header that will show props title, and then paragraph, let's do props description. So that will do the information, and we'll have another div where we are going to add a button that says buy now. And yes, I forgot the images first, so let's place that in here. And then it would be image source equals to props. Let's take the first image since for display and save that. Now I'm gonna head over to app.tsx and display the product there, and we need to press props. And so we're gonna need title. Let's do complete. And then we have a description, and I'll just accept the text that it's giving to me. So for the images, okay, we don't have a React logo. Let's pass an empty array, and until I add an image. For price, we need to pass number, and those are all the props. Now let's import the image. Assets, I'm going to paste the image, and this is thumbnail I generated using Midjourney, and this is just like a dummy text. It doesn't say anything, and the way we import the image in here is we give image a name. I'm gonna do, that would be the name of the source, and then we give from like where the path is, and then the public folder is publicly available, so that's why we placed it there, and then we're able to read the source from there. And let's copy that. Inside images, we're gonna create a new object. The source would be thumbnail image, and we'll have an alt text that would be also, let's save this. And as you can see before, this was highlighted as red because we're missing another alt field, but now it's gone after we added. And let's see how it looks like. We don't have any styling yet, so we should just see that. Let me do this. Okay, so here we have the image, which is very large now, but we're gonna update that. And then we have title, description, and even a buy now button. Okay, let's start adding some styling to our image. First, this goes like full width, as you can see, and we're gonna change that by adding a container. Let's have padding at the top 0, but add some margin and border on the left side, border on the right, and at the bottom. So anywhere except the top, because header already has a border. And save this. Next, we are gonna make this rounded, so that has rounded corners and looks a little bit better. And we're gonna have like 2 columns here. This is going to be like main column. It's gonna take up most of the space, and then on the right column, we're gonna have more information, and we're gonna move buy button on the right side. So to do that, let's make this container grid container by adding grid class name, and let's define the number of total columns, so they'll be grid cols 3. So right now what's happening is every single div is taking up 1 column, but we're gonna change that. We're gonna make image take up more of that. So cols that span, oh, it's column span 3. And Then we have a next one. This one can take 2. So on the next row, so this one takes up the full row. Then on the next row, this would take on the left side 2/3 of the whole row. And yeah, let's do, so this one doesn't need it, like automatically has it. And we can add, takes up the remaining space, border left. Let's add some padding and make it flex for later, and flex the action column when we're gonna add more items. And now because of the flex, we also have button that is full width. And let's modify the styling for the H1. We're gonna do text for Excel, and font would be bold, border at the bottom, and padding 6. Okay, and for the paragraph, we're going to change a color of the text a little bit to make it lighter, and also add some padding of the button here. And afterwards, we're going to add a router so we're able to navigate and create a new page for the checkout. As for the button first, let's do class name, add a different background color than what it has. Background indigo 500. This different colors come from the Tailwinds color set. Now let's do text white so it's more readable. And then on hover, I'm gonna do background indigo 600. So font bold and rounded. It is, I believe, already. But in different border radius. And we can add a shadow if we add like a shadow keyword and then the size of the shadow. But what I want to do is more add an outline, so it'd be like a we can also pass like customized values. So that would be, I'm gonna paste those values, so shadow, and then the length of the shadow and in what direction. So we have 25 down, 25 on the 0.25 rem on the left, and then we have the color. Let's save this, and this is the result. It has like a blue outline around if we hover over. So let's remove that, and that would be focus, outline, and none. I'm also going to add a border. Because border is taking current color, we have to add a color, and then I want to keep this on hover as well. Let's also add like a larger, like 2. And what I'm going to do is let's remove the first border and word wrap so you guys can see in here. So all the classes that I added. Because React doesn't come with built-in routing, we need to use something like React Router to enable like navigating to different pages, linking inside the application, and etc. So I'm going to go ahead and install React Router DOM. Here we have a yarn add, but because we are using a npm install, I'm going to use that instead. And we do also need, so npm install, we can install React Router DOM and React DOM. So first we go to main.tsx, which is inside source folder here, and we need to import browser router and basically wrap our application inside it. Otherwise, we won't be able to define or use routes. So I'm gonna do browser router and let's put app inside it. We can now close out the main.tsx and go to the app. I'm gonna close the extra files out and import the components that we're gonna need. So we're gonna need to define routes. We also need a route, outlet, and a link. Okay, and then the way this would work is first we'll create a function for the layout, and that would entail having a header always like at the top, and then the body is going to be changing depending on which page we're on. So we can abstract that as a separate element, and copying the header here, we can remove this from here, paste it, and in terms of passing the body, we do that using outlet that is imported from React Router DOM. And let's save this. So we are gonna use this once we define the routes. So this is just the product page. So let's remove this count state that was for when we set up example code, and we're going to turn this fragment into the routes, and we start defining routes. So main route path equals, and then we pass in the name of the path, and we can also say the element that we want to use as in reusable throughout the routes, and we're going to pass in the layout that we just created. And this is how we like close out the route definitions. So then inside here it serves as like a stack of the routes, and inside here we're going to have an index route. Path would be like this, and then element, here we pass the React component, so we can take this and paste it in here. Thought I had used the word wrap. Oh, we need to close this route out. Okay, we can just do it like this. And the next route we are going to have is checkout, but we don't have the element for checkout, so we're gonna just pass a div for now, and let's have another route for success, and same thing for this one. We're gonna create password success right after. So let's just test it out. If we go to checkout, press enter, we see the header at the top and we see the text for checkout. That means our routes are working. Now let's update this buy now button so it navigates to the checkout page. And that's, since it's side, we have that in the product, we can add the logic for navigation in here as well. And for that, we are going to need use navigate hook from React Router DOM. And we're going to call this hook inside our product component, and navigate function would be coming from use navigate hook. And then we'll create a function for our button that will pass it later on. And that would be handle pay click, that equals to, it takes no arguments, and it calls the navigate function, and it passes the path as an argument, and the path is checkout. Let's copy this function and add on click, handle pay click. Okay, that got reloaded. Let's click and we got to checkout. Now we can start building out the checkout page, where we're going to display the product information on the right side, and then we're going to have a form for like a payment on the right side. And once again, as we do for pages, let's create a new file for checkout. Let's close this out and save this like a sample component, and in update inside app.tsx, let's replace it so once we navigate to this page, we're able to see the changes that we're gonna make. So it's coming from pages and it will end up here. Okay. Now let's create a separate component. So two components, one would be for the product information, like on smaller version of it on the checkout form, checkout page, and then we're gonna have the form. And for that component, create a new file, name it product card. So we can define the props here for all the product information that we're going to display here, but we can also create a type product that we can put in a file and import it into a components that are going to be using the product. That would be simpler. So for the types, I will create a global type for the product. Let's create a new file, name it types.d.ts. So if you mark file with like d.ts, then it makes the types global. And let's do export type product. And let's give this, so all the types that we have for the current product, but price, description, image, we don't have the category. Instead of name, we have a title. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So in here, we're gonna say props equals product instead. Save that. And let's create a maybe utils file where we're gonna store the product information, since we only have like one product. So I'm gonna do that in product info.ts. Constant product, it is of type product, and it has a title, price, the rest I'm gonna copy it from here, kind of try to modify it. Hopefully that works. It's a long one. Let's do this. So for the image, let's just remove this. Price, and that's it. And let's pass in the path, which is inside source, assets. Okay. Let's see if we're missing, cannot find name product. Let's import product from types. Okay, and the price is not a text, it's a number. So that's why it's highlighting. What else? Oh, we have ID. Okay, we can have ID 1. And let's export the value of this. Or since it's the only constant that we have here, we can just do export default. Great, now wherever we have product card, we don't need this types anymore, and we can once again start displaying like different fields like props.image. Alt text would be same as, let's do props.title image. Then we can have a title, then paragraph for the description, and a price, which I'm going to put in a different div. Anyways, let's import this product card into our checkout. So, and another thing that we're going to import here is the product information that we have defined inside product info in here. So let's import that as well. And we can now pass product. Okay. Save this, see if we, okay, so we see the image, we're on the checkout now, and then all the other information. Let's update the styling for this one, so I'm gonna make this on the checkout page first flags, and I'll make this container, and also we're gonna have margin top 8. So later on, when we're going to, because this is flex, when we will add another component, it will take up also its space. As for the styling of the product card itself, let's go ahead here and first start with the main div. We're gonna add some border, make it rounded, paddings on both sides. Let's do flex and items start, and height minimum, so it will just match the height of the items. For the div, I will make this a little bit smaller. So yeah, let's place that in the div, and let's do width 100 pixels, and height would be 70 pixels. So yeah, it's a small one. And then we have this class that will take in the rest of the space that's available. So that would be flex scroll, flex, and flex direction column. And we'll have, so we'll place header and paragraph, this in same class. And then the price is in separate. Let's add some padding to the left so it has space from the image. And the class name, text to Excel, font bold. As for this one, text gray 900. Okay, I thought we added, oh, container here. Okay, great. Before we start creating some functions and interacting with Stripe, let's understand how Stripe payments work. So we have this for sites where all the way on the left, we have a customer that interacts with our page that is a client, and client interacts with the server, and then we have this Stripe. So for the client side, we're using React app, right? And then on the server, we're gonna deploy functions using AirCode. And then our server sends a payment intent. That is the term for Stripe. That means payment attempt. You can just send the payment right away. You just need first to have a payment attempt. And with this payment attempt, Stripe, it either fails or goes through. So if it's successful, you send, and with this attempt, you send some order information. For example, the currency, the amount, and etc. So once it is successful, it returns it, and it returns a lot of other fields and informations about the payment intent, but we have to pick one field, client secret, and pass that on to the client from our server. And what happens after is user fills out the form in this part and submits the payment. Once we receive that, also using the client secret that we received from this server, we call Stripe confirm payment. Elements instance here is a Stripe elements. It's like comes from Stripe module, and that's a attempted payment. And if it's successful, Stripe will redirect to the page that you have indicated in return URL. In our case, we're going to pass on checkout, and we'll have like a payment status. Now, this was also like an attempt. Payment might still needs time to process, so it might still go through and fail, or the process might start and it might be successful. And what only way you can know the answer if payment actually went through is by monitoring this. Because Stripe server would like send an event in case something changes. So if you pass, for example, a URL where Stripe can send that event to, then you can accept it, and based on that, the answer that comes back, you can either like start your order shipment, or depending if you're sending a digital product via email, that's when you start. I see a lot of people make a mistake that once they get to this part, then they start the order, and it's not a right way, because it might, like, the payment might still fail. And if you ever like had a failed payment, you'd get, like, for example, if you're buying something, get an email like, oh, payment didn't go through, please update your payment card or something like that. So that's what happens behind the scene. And I'm also gonna show you guys how to like set up webhooks. That's also going to happen inside AirCode, and it's very easy to set up. And yeah, finally what we have that Stripe is giving us is two keys, public key and private key. And this is also your answer to if you're asking yourself question, why can't we just do all these payments on the React? It's not possible because first we need to interact and generate payment intent using the Stripe. Usually that's either in Node or there's no like React SDK for that. And the second is a security issue because we are given private keys. And if you add your private keys into the React app, that is still exposed to the browser. So if someone has access to your private key, they can start generating, like using it, and it's not safe. Versus on server, once you have that deployed, that way it's your private key is safe. Although for the public key, we do need that on the React side. So now let's go ahead to Stripe, generate those keys, and then start integrating the API. If you navigate to Stripe developers inside your dashboard, you'd have to have Stripe account for this one. And I can also like include the link in the video description for the developer section. But you'd get this different sections. You're gonna go to API keys, and then as I mentioned here, we have two keys, publishable key that is going to go to our React app, and secret key that go ahead and copy that, and we will use that inside AirCode. We will use AirCode to build backend of our application, and with AirCode we can deploy serverless functions. We can even write those functions directly in the browser and test them in the browser. And now I did mention server in the diagram when going over how to save payment data or interact with Stripe. But serverless doesn't mean that there isn't a server. It just means that there isn't one where you have to manage or like you have to configure. It's done already under the hood by AirCode. So for this kind of use cases where you have a tool and you want to sell online, or a service where your application is not data heavy, like creating a server, like building a MongoDB database yourself, then adding Express, connecting it and writing it all the API endpoints, then hosting separately. All this is tedious for those kind of use cases, and I think deploying functions on AirCode that has MongoDB already integrated and managed would be the best case scenario for this, and so you can focus on writing code and logic. Once you sign up on AirCode and go to the dashboard, you'll see the Apps tab, and we can create a new Node.js app where we first give it name. I'm gonna also say digital product, and I'll save, have TypeScript checked and create. So this only takes a few seconds to create, and let's quickly go over what we have here. So on the left side, we have like the file structure, and you can see like the file name kind of corresponds to the function name, but it doesn't have to be the same. And on the right side, we can debug. For example, if we press, it's kind of similar if you use like Postman, you can make a request and test it. And then this would be parameters you're passing, then we'll get a response. Let's just try that one out. Then we have a console here, and we also have access to the database. Right now, we just have only one collection, it's a sample collection, and yes, so we got received params, which is a console coming from here. So it printed out and it returned a response, which is message and hi AirCode. Okay, and then this is the function that was handling that. Now we'll create a new function for the payment, and the goal of the function would be to take the order information and send a request to Stripe, and then Stripe will return payment intent, which will send it as a return to the client. So first, let's rename let's rename this function payment. And let's think about what kind of parameters we want to pass it on. So I'm going to start defining type params in here, and that would equal to, first we need an amount. That would be number. This is for Stripe. Currency, that would be string. And then also payment method type. This is required for Stripe because there's like card payments, PayPal, and etc. And then for us, we also need a user email. So later on, when the payment is confirmed, we can send them an email. But for like the Stripe setup, we don't need user email. And parameters, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to update this. So amount, this is for when we're gonna test it, so 200. Then we would have currency, USD. And let's do payment method type. I'm going to do card. Let's debug this, and we should see in console log this time these parameters should be passed. And let's update the type. Instead of any, let's do params. Okay, so now we're taking in the parameters, and what we need to do to interact with the Stripe is to install Stripe node dependency. And also dependencies installation is very simple. On the left bottom corner here, we already have installed by default when we created a project. AirCode was installed, and so was TypeScript because we selected TypeScript. So we can look for Stripe here now, and we're gonna see this one right here selected, and it should start the installation. And once it is installed, we're gonna import Stripe from Stripe. Great, and as I mentioned, we need to have a Stripe environment variable. So for that, we go inside environments, and I'm gonna name this as Stripe secret key. And let's copy the key from here, so it would be this one. And once we add the value, we get this warning that the changes will take effect online on the next deployment because this is environment variable. So let's go ahead and deploy. It will identify which functions we made changes to and include this here. And once we press deploy, a URL will show up here, and then we can use that URL to make requests from our client React application. So connecting it to our client, this backend that we have, is very simple. And while this is deployed, here's our URL. I'm gonna take in the parameters that we have, destructure it. It would be email, amount, currency, and payment method type. So that equals to params. And now we need to access to this Stripe secret key. And in AirCode, this environment variables you can access by process, as you do with your node, process.env, and the name of the variable. So if this is not undefined, if this is available, then we create constant, like a Stripe instance, and this equals to new Stripe, and we pass in the key. We also pass in the TypeScript version of this like Stripe, it requires, like, since it's throwing like a error, it requires API version. So this is my version, and then TypeScript, we have to mark it as true. Yeah, once we have that, we're gonna try a payment intent. So that would be constant payment intent equals await Stripe dot create function, and I'm gonna make this bigger so you guys can see better. Okay, this is where we pass amount and currency. So let's catch if there's any errors. I'm gonna define it with any, and we can return constant the status. When you make an API call and return status, like error no status is 500. So we do that using this context here in AirCode. And we can also console log this here for our testing, and return message would be error.message. Okay, so once this returns payment intent, we can get the payment ID that we're gonna use later on to save the payments. The reason we're saving payments in the database is one, just to track user payments, and second, when it's confirmed then we can send user their item, and that would be, so if we hover over, we see what type this payment intent is, and if we go to like Stripe documentation, we're gonna see what fields it comes in, which I already examined, so that's why I can say that this is the ID field. And then we have a client secret that we're going to return. So let's do client secret, and that would be payment intent. And here we have also all the available fields, and let's do client secret. And before that, we can add a successful status context that status is 200. Now we don't have to deploy again now, we can just test those changes first and deploy. One more thing I'm gonna do here is, so let's return, please add Stripe API key. So if we don't have this, then we need to add that. Okay, let's go back to debug. Oh, and then we're missing here email, which we're not using now, but I'm just gonna add it so I don't forget later on. And comma. And I got an error. Okay, so this indicates on which line we have an error, which is, and then we're expected to have comma. I have the extra. Oh, I meant that for this one. And let's try again. Do debug. Okay, so received parameters, and we as a response got back our client secret. Great. Now let's create a payments table in the database so we can save this payment ID and user email as well. So we have, I'm gonna add a new collection. It's kind of like a similar to a table, and I'm gonna name it payments. And once that's created, we can add fields by going from here. And the field I'm going to add is a payment ID, and that is going to be string. Also user email. And one more field is going to be is confirmed, which at first we're gonna leave it as a null. So let's do this as Boolean. And then once like Stripe returns like a webhook that confirms, then we can take this and mark it as true. So that means that payment was processed. Okay, so to access the table, it's pretty simple. Let's do, after this ID, we're gonna have constant payments table. And by default, we already have AirCode at the top imported. So we're going to take that equals to AirCode.db, that table, and we pass in the table name. That would be payments. And we can create the object that we want to insert into this table first. So that would be payment item. And the field user email would be the email that we're getting from here. Comma, and then we directly pass payment ID that we got from the intent. And the third step is to run the insert itself. So constant result is what we'll get back. And we do await payments table dot save. So you can see there's like different functions for this table, delete, save. We can also query the data just like with any other database, and payment intent. Okay, so And we can run this again, and this time the record should show up in the database. Okay, let's go here. And there it is. Oh, we saved the whole, okay, my bad. As I meant payment item. Okay, let's debug. And we should see the item show up in a database, and here it is. Is confirmed is empty as we left it. We have user email and payment ID. Now let's deploy these changes as we tested, so they are reflected like here. Deploy. As I mentioned, Stripe has a React SDK that we can use when trying to integrate Stripe with the client, and this will be also in combination of using our server, because we need to get still the client secret, but then we have to confirm using the Stripe form and etc. So let's install this. I'm gonna copy the command and go back to our code inside the terminal here. I'm gonna paste it and start installing. Let's create a new file. This is going to be .env.local. This is where we're gonna save the Stripe public key. And in Vite, if we want to access our public keys, we have to start with the name with Vite and then the name Stripe pk, and that equals to, and then inside this quotes you can paste your key. Also, don't forget to add, if you already don't have inside ignore.env.local, since you don't want to push your keys to the GitHub. Let's save that, so then it shouldn't get included. And now following the tutorial, if we take a look at this code, so using hooks we can display the form inside this like payment element and add a button. So that's like would be our checkout form, and I'm gonna copy this, and before this checkout form is displayed, you can see the application is wrapped in this elements provider. Now we don't need to wrap the whole application, but what we can do is wrap the page itself where we need it. So that would be on pages, checkout, and let's first copy. So we need to copy elements, and we need to copy load Stripe. And also I'm gonna use the same options as they have defined in here. As for the Stripe promise, let's do here and replace this string with our environment variable, which can be imported using import meta.env, and the name of the variable vite.stripe pk. And as a next step, we put this side here, and next would be we'll put the checkout form in here. So let's do components, new file, checkout form, tsx. This one, but we don't need classes. Let's just do this one, functional component. Okay, and paste. We need also import statement. I'm gonna also import React at the top and use state. Okay, perfect. Let's define the type of event. This is going to be React dot for you event, and inside here HTML form element. Let's check if the message is available, and what else is here? If Stripe is also null, let's return this. Okay, let's have, let's pass the state of this. Undefined. Okay. I'm gonna save this. I'm going to import checkout form in here. We're not done, by the way, with the checkout form. We have to make a few more tweaks, and I'll export. Okay. Checkout form. Okay, that's weird. And I will put this in between here. Now, so we have a function that handles the submit, and this is triggered when the form is submitted. So that's our form on submit, handle submit. That's our button, which is disabled if Stripe and elements haven't loaded. It has also displays an error message if there's any errors. And as you can see here, this is where we have this constant result. We make a fetch API request, and this is to create payment intent and obtain client server from your server endpoint. So this also indicates that we need to have a server. That's where our AirCode comes in, and we're gonna copy this, and instead of this URL, paste in here. So we make a request to this, and as a return statement here, we pass in what we wanted to return to. So we want to do, and it takes in the full URL, so we can't just say like checkout as we, or like think we have a page for success. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'll say just get window location origin and then success. I think that should be it for all the changes. Besides, we need one more input field for email, but first let's see if the Stripe card and form is loading on our local. And we have to restart the local server because when we create new environment variables, it needs to rerun again. So if I'm running it here, let's stop that and do npm run dev. Okay, so if I go to buy now I am able to see the checkout form, and that means that Stripe is loading so far. Now let's also add email input in the same styling as Stripe has. And I'm gonna also add like padding on the right side. So for this div, last name margin at the bottom 3, and then we have a label. And let's do HTML4 and email input. This would be email. Let's do another div. Input type is email. ID is email input. Then let's do placeholder, since the other fields also have a placeholder. Let's finish adding the input type for the email, and then we have to update the value as well. And in here, I'm going to add the class name and just like similar styling as the other fields have. So with full, then we have a background color that's white, rounded, custom value 5 pixels. We have a border, and border color is this hash. It's followed by a box shadow, but box shadow styling for Tailwind is a little bit different than the one that Stripe has. So what we can do is we can label this as box shadow custom. And let's save this. Okay. Then we go to Tailwind config, and in here add inside extend, we do box shadow, and we add a custom value which I'm going to paste, and is the same value as like Stripe has. So let's save this, and border, oh, that's why the border is not showing up, because I had a typo. Okay, that looks almost similar. And as for the value of this one, it is going to be email input, the state that we have. Oh, we haven't created the state. So let's create a state so we can store that, and that would be input set email input that equals to use state string. By default, it's empty. And so we pass that as value, and then we also have to pass onChange function that equals to, we take in element and set email input as element dot target value. And once this is updated, we can pass this to our API. So we have a post request, then we have headers, we can add content type application JSON, and then inside the body we would, there's an extra, this one. So currency would be USD, and then as you remember in params inside AirCode we defined that it takes in email. So we would pass the email, then we also need an amount. So this is going to be the amount that the price of your item. So let's put this, and what else do we need? Okay, payment method type card. As for the amount, let's import the product info here and put the product price. Oh, because it's in cents. Okay. let's save this, and we don't need the quotes because this is JSON object and we are already stringifying it using JSON stringify. And then we have a client secret, we send that. Okay, I think everything else looks good. Let's save that. And we can try it out. So, and Stripe has like a test card number, which is 4 zeros. Oh, that's the email. So card number is 4 zeros. I'm gonna do web. Okay, let's put email expression. They could be anything in the future. So the CSV, and let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pay. And we got redirected to success. And also, as you can see at the top, Stripe also added like a payment intent ID, client secret, and the status of the redirect, which is success. Okay, we can now modify this like success page just a bit, make it look nicer. And for that, I'm going to create a new component for success. Let's first save this and go to app.tsx, import success from here. Okay, so we don't need any props. I'm just gonna remove this H1 and let's say your order confirmation and some text that we usually get. Okay, let's save this and let's do class name, border, rounded, some padding, flex direction column, flex, then we add margin to the top, items, start, height would be minimum, and then put this in a container. I think it is. Okay. And we can copy button that we have on the product, like the styling, and apply the same for the pay so we are consistent on the checkout form. Okay, and let's also add a link so we're able to navigate in the header to the main page. That would be going to header.tsx. And we import link from React Router DOM and turn this into a link. href equals to not href. It's a to the props name, and save this. Here we are. Point where we can set up a webhook to monitor status changes in payment intents. And so what Stripe does is that If you set up, you can send webhook events to your server. So whenever status of your payment intent changes, that is the good point to start. If you have to send an email to like data warehouse or make an API call, some kind of like order fulfillment, at that point when the payment intent is either confirmed succeeded or it failed. So that's the two events that we're interested in, but there's also like other events, and it's not recommended to check this status on the client side because a client user can leave the page, so then that means that they would never get the order, so you shouldn't trigger it from client side. And also you can keep making, since this is a webhook from the client side, you can keep making different requests and keep checking, but as it says here, Stripe has rate limiting, so if you make too many requests on the same one, it might return an error. So yeah, the best way is to set up so the Stripe calls your server, and that could be configured inside dashboard. Inside webhooks section, this is where we'll be adding an endpoint or code that we can use in Node.js. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function for this webhook that is going to receive like a ping when we get from Stripe. And for that one, we can add a new file, name this payment confirmation. And just let's deploy it and see what kind of events we receive or data once that happens. So I'm going to deploy. Once we deploy, the URL is going to appear here, that we're going to use it and place it in here. So we have this, and I'm also going to select the events which I want to be notified about, and that would be payment intent. So when that is succeeded and failed, and it's cool that it like also adds like how to handle those kind of types here. Let's add events, add endpoint. So waiting for events, for event to happen, we should trigger a payment, and we can do that from our application. Let's do this. Okay, the order has confirmed. Okay, so the payment intent succeeded, and we got back a response message AirCode. That means that AirCode also received it. And to see the event that came in sent by Stripe, we can go inside. Now this time we're not making the request is coming in, and that would be inside mock by online request. And here we see all the parameters that was passed in. So what we're going to do with this information is that if it succeeded, which is, I believe, inside type payment intent succeeded, then we're going to go in the payments table and mark this payment like order as like paid is confirmed to true. And the way we'll find the order is using payment intent ID, which we saved it with the payment. So let's get right into that. And I'm going to take first payment ID, and that equals params, the data as we saw, it's object.id. And next thing we need event type equals params.type. And let's get a value, let payment confirmed. So here we can write logic that if event type equals to payment intent that succeeded, we'll set payment confirmed to true. So if this is equal to payment failed, then we'll mark this as false. And else we will return received unknown event type, but we only marked these two event types, so I don't think that Stripe will return anything, not any other events. Now let's get a hold of payments table that equals to AirCode DB table payments. And we can run a query to find the record. There's like find many, but there should only be one record with that payment ID. So let's do first record, and that equals to await payments table, and then we pass in where statement, let's a condition, and payment ID field, which is, if we take a look at it, this one, equals to payment ID returned from here. And we add the function find one. So if there's no record found, we're gonna return message payment not found. If we find it, then we will update it. So that would be first record is confirmed. We'll set that to payment confirmed. So it would either be true or false, so payment failed. And then we save this updated value by await payments table save first record. And then if we are able to update that, we say payment confirmed successfully. And then once you save that, at that point you can also trigger like sending an email or sending the order. Let's deploy our changes. Okay, here's the deploy button. And then let's test the workflow with the webhooks, starting from our React app client side to adding the payment here and then confirming it. Okay, let's go back. Let's say buy now. Card number. Okay, we're gonna do pay. So order confirmation. Now let's go back to the database. Let's refresh. We have another order here and it is confirmed to be true. We can double check on the Stripe side where we have events. And just now the payment succeeded. Now, since we are able to confirm if payment succeeded or not, we will send an email using Resend. Resend is a service that comes with an SDK and makes like sending emails very simple. And what you would need to send email is to have a domain. Otherwise, you send emails from the domain email address that's of your domain. So for example, john@reacttutorials.xyz. Once you go to the Resend dashboard, you're gonna come here and add domain. When the domain is added, you need to confirm DNS records with the provider you're using where you purchased your domain from. As you can see, I have already added a domain, so I won't go through that step. And we go to API keys, create a new API key. Let's say I'll add AirCode on this. Environments, I'm going to add recent API key. Email address from which I want to send an email. Once we have that, let's create a new file for the function, and that would be send order email. And then we can use this function, and it's also possible in your code to import, create helper functions and import it into another function, and we'll see how. And I'm going to add a resend module we can use to send those emails. And let's import, while that is loading, resend from resend. And as for the parameters, that would be email. We just need the email. And let's update this, and let's create a resend instance. That would be new resend, and it takes in the API key, resend API key. And let's also access from email. All right, and we come here, we do try. Constant data that equals to await resend function emails.send. And inside send, we pass in from just from field, from email as string. Then we have to, that's going to be like whoever we're sending the email, right? So coming from params. Subject, I'm going to say your order. And inside, instead of just like a text, you can even pass an HTML or like a React component in case of resend also has an SDK. So what I'm going to pass is just like a div and a link to my resource, which is like just a Notion site with some information on it. And yeah, that's about it. Then we catch an error, code 0, message delivered. And we don't need this console log here. It's also cool we have like the format code. So it reads our environment variables, a return statement. That's why we're getting a TypeScript error, okay. And let's test out this function first before we add it to payment confirmation. So if we go to debug, and as a parameter I pass email, oh, instead of catch, I'm gonna change this console log error, but it returned higher code, so that means it was delivered. Let's deploy that. Then email, this is what the email looks like. Now we can import this function into payment confirmation. So once we save this to import, that would be send order email from and after this, let's also call await the function and pass user email, which we can get from this record from payments because Stripe doesn't have that. So if we go here, we can use this field. User email. Okay, let's deploy this. So it expected 2 arguments, but got 1. Okay. So we can remove the context and see if that worked. All right, now I'm going to test one more time. Oh. I just have to say email and then pass like that. Okay. Oh, cool. Okay, so let's do one more test. It's actually... Okay, then we should see another, it's already reloading, another value coming. And I should get an email. The second email that was sent when I just submitted the payment. And that completes the email sending and the payment processes. Now what we can also go over is sending like weekly reports, emailing it to yourself, or then in the future if you have an application that also accepts other sellers, you can take like this week's number of payments. And when you do something scheduled, you usually need to like set up a cron job. And per simple terms, it would be like scheduled task. And we can do that with AirCode using this field here, schedules, where we create a scheduled job. It's very easy to set up. We select like job name, let's do weekly reports, and then we select the function to run. I'm actually going to create a new function and I'm gonna do repeat time interval, and start time I will set it to sometime in the future, maybe like this, and add an end time just in case I forget. And let's create a new file. We can name this reports.ts, and we can achieve 2 things here. First, get the number of purchases in the past week, and for that we can query by time range. Put this side by side, and let's get be AirCode.db.table, and then we can do like from new date to this. Instead of 24, let's do 7 because we want 7 days. And then we are going to do constant count instead of finding the record. And result equals await. We have payment table and AirCode.db get. And to get the count, it's simply count. Let's format code. Now we can import send order email from that will actually send an order email.
Then let's just copy this and update it. And I'm going to replace this with this, so we don't have parents email.
We're just gonna send it to ourselves, and then weekly order. Let's remove this and say, so let's do you made, and this would be count. And let's also add another where condition where is confirmed equals true. And then let's do as string. Okay. Let's read it, let's deploy it. And update, so in the scheduled tasks we have reports instead of send order email. Edit this order. Instead of this, we'll add reports.TypeScript and save it. In terms of design, you can always add more information about the product here or update the styling of the sidebar as well. Since this was not a front-end specific tutorial, I didn't focus too much on how to do the styling and etc. But I do have some other videos if you want to check them out. But I'm gonna add a little bit more so you get the update a little bit more. Let's go to product, for example. In here we can add another type of props, which is going to be children, and the type of the children would be React Node. So then we can just directly start adding where we have a product page, just here. Oh, we are passing the props from app.tsx. Forgot about that, and probably not the best. It would be the best if we also extracted this one, but let's say we can add header too. Let's say what, oh, perfect. I was gonna do what's included. All right, that's great. UL, maybe. What other suggestions does it have? Oh, okay, so we did add children, but we have to display that, and that will come after here. Props.children. Basically a way if you want to pass like a React node in there. And what happened to the padding? Let's do this one. Add it to the main container. So, oh, that's not gonna work. Okay, we can take this. Add padding 6. And remove it from here. Just at the bottom. I'm gonna add a break here, and inside children, let's add break and maybe okay, another unordered list. And finally, I want to do maybe like a link preview. Text underline. Let's add some emojis. Okay. Alright, let's quickly recap what we did. We built a website for our digital product with 3 pages: product information, checkout page, and order confirmation. We integrated Stripe SDK in the React and for payment processing on the server side, as well as set up webhooks for monitoring the status of the payment intent. We also set up payments database to track the orders and the progress of the order. We used resend to send the emails to the user, and finally set up a weekly job to get emails about the number of orders coming in. That would be it for the tutorial. Don't forget to check out AirCode, and if you want to take another look at the code, GitHub link is in the description of the video. Hopefully this tutorial has provided you with a lot of new learnings, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.